it feels like it's not something like I'm doing. It's just who I am.
Yes, I love that. It's not something I'm doing. It's just who I am.
Yes.
And didn't it, like it did with me, didn't it make for a richness of life that you never could have imagined?
Oh, yes. It's so hard to explain it to somebody because it is kind of like, you're kind of like in a cult and you don't realize it. And it's like, no, just try it.
Just try it.
And then come to me and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Like the colors are brighter.
Okay, let's just jump right in.
Okay,
Suzanne.
let's do it.
So, you know, a lot of people are longtime listeners of the podcast and they have listened to and binged every single episode. We can binge podcast episodes. We don't binge drink anymore.
Yes.
We can binge podcast episodes.
We can binge listen for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, in case there is somebody here who didn't hear that first episode that we did together, can you give me a little bitty intro into your story and like you as a person, as an online presence?
Yeah. So I started influencing after the birth of my first daughter. So that was 10 years ago. I started in just style and I was dealing with a lot of postpartum anxiety, OCD, and I needed to find myself. So I started My Kind of Sweet, and that was all about style and motherhood. And it was like that for a while. And I even, helped promote drinking, and I romanticized alcohol and made it all look, nice and pretty. And then I stopped drinking in January 2020, like right before, the world shut down. And my drinking story is different in that I was a party girl in college and in my 20s. But then in motherhood, it wasn't this like, huge problematic thing. I didn't get a DUI. Like there were all of these things that I could point to say my relationship. Fine. Yeah, I'm fine. My relationship with alcohol is normal and there's nothing to see except I hated it. And I didn't tell anybody I hated it because I thought that would mean something really bad.
And then I would stop. Yeah.
I would have to stop. I would have to like report to rehab immediately, right? Like I would be destined to I would be powerless and all of these things. And that wasn't an option. And so I just assumed that like I just had to drink better. Like if I felt the effects of alcohol, if I drank too much, it's because I wasn't doing it the right way. I had to find a better way to drink. And most of the time I did. But I still hated it. And so then when I stopped, I had just had my third baby. He was 3 months old and I was like getting back into drinking. Because like after every pregnancy, I was like, okay, I just have to get over that like hump, the hump of where like alcohol really tastes like alcohol and it tastes like poison and I hate it. I just have to get past that and like get back to where alcohol tastes good again. And I blacked out, which I hadn't done. I think I'd blacked out like maybe once or twice in like 10 years. And I blacked out and I nursed my baby in a blackout because he was 3 months old and I was still nursing. And I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I said it, and I had never said that before. And I said it out loud to my husband, and he kind of looked at me like, okay, like that's cute. Like, and as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, holy shit, what does this mean? Wait, can I swear?
Yeah, you can do whatever. You are who you are. We invite people as who they are onto this podcast. And we've all heard that word.
Okay, just making sure. But I was like, oh my God, what am I saying? Like, don't say that. That's insane. What are you saying? But I felt something like, okay, yeah. I'm done. And then that kind of started this next incredibly fulfilling, challenging, and amazing chapter of my life.
Yeah. And gosh, we're almost in 2025, which will be 5 years
Yes.
right? 21, 22, 23, 24.
Yes.
5 years is
5 years.
big. 5 years is big.
It does feel like it feels like it's not something like I'm doing. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
Like I'm,
Yes, I
yeah.
love that. It's not something I'm doing, it's just who I am. And
Yes.
didn't it, like it did with me, didn't it make for a richness of life that you never could have imagined?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost so it's so hard to explain it to somebody because it is kind of like I look at alcohol, drinking alcohol, as you're kind of like in a cult
Mm-hmm.
and you don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, no, I don't drink that much. And no, I don't black out. I don't. And it's like, no, 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 just try it.
Just try
And
it.
then come to me and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Like the colors are brighter. And
The
like
colors are brighter.
yes, the
We describe a
moments.
lot of these things the exact same way.
Wait,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yes. Like the
It just makes for something that you didn't even have before. So many people
yes.
think that sobriety or stopping drinking or however they want to phrase it is like, oh well, I have to because I have a problem.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that the big piece here is just how do I stop doing this thing? What they don't realize is the life that you get on the other side. And that is
Oh,
the light that you shine in your community and with your message, and now becoming a truly like modern day voice for sobriety. It is the way that you describe it is enticing. The way that
mm,
they used to describe sobriety and alcoholism and just choosing another way of life,
mm-hmm.
depending on whatever you're addicted to, because everybody's addicted to something,
Yeah. Yeah.
used to be very fear based. There
Yes.
is nothing fear based about the way that you describe it. It is like people are like a moth to a flame to that kind of wait, I can have a better life. How?
Right.
Oh, I do
Right.
this? And that's why I've always been drawn to you in the way that you describe sobriety. Because in my experience, that is
Hmm.
sobriety.
Yeah.
That is the other side of this thing. And that's why I say it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Having a drinking problem, having an addiction issue, best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me a way to live that I never would have had access to before.
Yes. Exactly. I think you and I think we're so alike in that, in
Yeah.
being thankful of everything that brought us here,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because without that, and while my story is different, I was on that path. I mean, my drinking in college and in my 20s was problematic. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was party girl, it was drinking to escape and to cope, to conform, like all of the things that we see. And it's insane to me now when I look back and I think I thought that I didn't qualify for this full alcohol-free life.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea that we have and the what we've been taught is that like only certain people, only if you are quote unquote, and I use like big quotes on this, like only if you're that bad
Right.
do
Rock
you
bottom.
qual yeah,
The
rock bottom,
seven
like
DUIs, the like I've hurt
yes,
someone, the I've lost my job, the I've lost my family, that I'm homeless, like the I've had an accident. Like
right.
that is what they think the qualifiers are. When in fact, you said the qualifier in the first part of this podcast already. I hated it. I hated
Yes.
it. The way that it made me feel, I kept it inside, but I hated it. There are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people listening to this podcast that are silently watching you on social media or maybe me on social media that are like, what is it that these women are, what is it? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want it.
Mm-hmm.
I want what's on the other side of this.
Yeah.
And they're probably thinking to themselves, like, is this what's standing in my way from achieving that? Because,
Right.
like, I kind of feel like I hate it too. But everybody around me
Mm-hmm.
seems like it acts like it's the most awesome thing in the entire world. But hey, that's what we looked like on the outside too.
That's the thing. Exactly. Like when we're taught not to talk about our relationship with alcohol, we don't talk about our relationship with alcohol. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're really good at assuming, this person is fine. She doesn't think about her. She's
Mm-hmm.
just the unicorn, which is
Mm-hmm.
what we've been taught is a normal, but it's not. That the unicorn drinker is not the normal drinker.
Mm-mm.
And like we don't know about anybody's relationship with alcohol. And then so we assume that we are the problem
Right.
instead of assuming it's actually
Mm-hmm.
alcohol's the
Mm-hmm.
problem. And like, yeah, you could wait. Like, you could wait until you lose something to alcohol that makes you feel like you're qualified. But if you take a look at your full life, what are you willing to lose? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would qualify you then? Is it your license, your marriage, custody, God forbid, your home, your job, your a friendship?
Or your happiness or your access to a full life. It's like
Yes,
why wait for the loss when you can reach for the gain? When I see
right.
someone like you, it's like that's the gain. And
Mm-hmm.
you chose it. Your journey to this is a
Mm-hmm.
lot this is what is different in our journey. My
Mm-hmm.
journey was pretty rock bottomy. I never had a DUI. I wasn't doing illegal drugs. I was definitely illegally
Mm-hmm.
using the prescriptions I was being prescribed, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
if you looked at the details of things. I didn't get in legal trouble. I didn't lose, I wasn't married. I did lose my husband, who was then my boyfriend. I lost him. That was my final straw.
Mm-hmm.
And I had reached a point, because mine was prescription medication and alcohol, in
Mm-hmm.
my journey where I was a totally different person. But alcohol is so sneaky
Mm.
that it always tells you, like, this is not the problem. Actually, this is the solution. Keep putting a band-aid on it. Keep putting a
Yes.
band-aid. If you get a different job or a different boyfriend or this or that, you're going to come out of this and, like,
Mm-hmm.
hold hands with me until you get there. But,
Yeah.
I got to a point where I ended up in a treatment program. My parents facilitated that because they were like, this is the end of the road. And I would not be here had that not happened.
Yeah.
I am fascinated by, Suzanne, people who can quit cold turkey.
Mm-hmm.
I am very fascinated by that. Also, the people who can quit cold turkey without the hand holding of professional help, rooms of AA treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I tried that and I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious about that, because like I said, that is not in my world. That was not my journey. But also because I know a lot of people listening to this are in the same phase of life that you and I are in.
Mm-hmm.
They are
Yeah.
parents. They are sometimes like the full-time parent. They're taking care of kids. And it's not as easy as I was like 27, 28 years old, not really a job. My parents could help me. It was easier for me
Yeah.
to get professional help. It is not as easy, especially if you don't hit the rock bottom and you don't have everybody around you in the camp. It's
Yes.
not as easy to take that measure. So I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are probably going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to try dry January or sober October." Like
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have to be the cold turkey people.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, because I'm very fascinated by people who can do it on their own, because I'd like to think that I'm a very strong person. I can do like anything. I really can.
You
I've always
are.
been mentally strong. I couldn't
Yeah.
do that. I couldn't do it.
So I think you actually said this to me. I don't know if you remember, and I think you've talked about this before, is changing from a place where you're not forced into change is hard.
It's the
It's
hardest. Fine is the new
it's
rock bottom.
right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the hardest. And so yes, like I'm trying to think because I get this a lot. Like I wasn't sober curious leading up to when I stopped, right?
Yeah.
And then when I stopped, I had no idea what I was doing. And I didn't, all I knew, and I just kept coming back to that moment of waking up on the couch, so hungover and with such shame of having nursed my baby in a blackout. And like I literally just kept coming back to that, coming back to that. Anytime I had like questions about, is this
Yeah.
forever? What am I doing? What does this mean? What will happen? No, like I had to block those out. No what ifs. What do I know? I know for sure I don't want to feel like how I felt that morning. And I kind of just made it my entire I do have OCD. And
Which might have served you well, probably, in
yes,
this
yes.
instance.
I became I did become obsessed. I had one AirPod in like every day. At this point I had a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. And so I I had 1 year out to make sure they were like still alive. It wasn't about them thriving at that point. I was like, just let me, it's the good enough thing for right now for them. Because
Yeah.
this, I gotta figure this out. And so then I listened to all the quit lit. I started like saying, okay, how have I used alcohol? Like, what have I lost to it? Let's really, really, really start telling the truth instead
Yeah.
of like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to. And I just slowly started doing that. And then I didn't keep it a secret, which I think was
That is
big.
something that you do have in common with Common. Even though AA is anonymity of the program,
Hmm.
the secrets keep you sick thing, and you've got to bring
Yeah.
other people into your recovery is a big thing in the recovery community in
Yeah.
traditional old school
Yes.
recovery too.
Yeah.
And it's
Bec-
important.
it's so important. I had, I was no stranger to feeling shame about my drinking. I felt shame about my drinking a lot. And that I always say it's like mold in the basement. Like I was just like the shame, yeah, because shame for me was the most corrosive feeling. I didn't want to
Yeah.
feel it. I think it's possible to feel it and you have to feel it,
Yeah.
but you have to do it in a safe space with people you trust, with a therapist. But I would just push it down. And as I was starting to heal and really go through my relationship with alcohol and excavate and like take out the mold, I didn't want that shame anymore. And I didn't feel like my sobriety and my not drinking, I didn't want to feel ashamed of that. And it was starting more and more, drinking was starting to feel less like a privilege.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
this isn't a privilege that I've lost. Like, I'm
You
taking,
stopped glamorizing it. You
yeah,
looked
I'm
at the
taking
cold
something back.
hard.
Yes.
You're taking
Yes.
something back. I love
Yes.
mold in the basement. Mold in the
Oof.
basement. You
Right?
can live with mold in the basement. That's the
Yeah.
thing. But it will
Yeah.
make you really sick and
It'll
everybody in your
make
home really sick.
it'll make you really sick and it spreads and it
Yeah.
festers and like and the only way to deal with the mold in the basement is to shine the light and like let's go downstairs. Like let's just
Yeah.
first let's
Yeah.
survey and see what's going on down there.
Yeah.
And that that's why then I created this our community that we have, the cafe, to say like, hey, I think we're kind of all on our own in our drinking. We've been taught not to talk about it. And like we're just pushing down our shame
Yeah.
because I think alcohol brings with it a whole lot of shame. We do things we wouldn't normally do. We say things. We're really any yeah, our integrity is at stake.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then just talking about it, like
Yeah.
having a place where we can just talk openly about, hey, while I was drinking, I nursed my baby in a blackout. What does that mean? Really
Yeah.
talking through it. And I can say it easily now because I don't have shame. I have
Yeah.
guilt. I have like, that was really bad. Like, that
But you know
wasn't
what?
good. That
That is a
wasn't who I was.
it's a gift when you have those moments, especially when those moments aren't the rock bottom moments.
Hmm.
It is a gift because it's something too, like in traditional recovery that they call play the tape. They're like when
Mm,
your brain starts to romanticize the alcohol
yes.
again, and when it starts to say, you know what, I didn't drink every day. It wasn't like I was drinking vodka in the morning.
Yeah. Yes.
Like play the tape. Play
Yeah.
the tape from that moment where it was really bad and where the
Yeah.
reality of your relationship with alcohol really came to the cold hard truth of the forefront of your
Hmm.
brain, and you played the tape. And so I think that in a cold turkey situation, playing the tape is
Yes.
really helpful. And I think something else that you said, bringing someone in on the journey.
Hmm.
I think people don't want to say it out loud because they don't want the finality. Because they think if I say it
Yeah.
out loud, this is when
Yes.
they give me my ticket to the
Yes.
express train to rehab, and I got three
Right.
kids.
Exactly. Or
And
like then I'm like held super accountable and I don't even know what I'm doing.
And
And
like,
so
how can I
then,
survive without it? Because they don't know all the
yes.
tools. Because you find the
Yeah.
tools on the other side. Because alcohol is your tool. When you're still using alcohol,
Right.
alcohol's the tool. You
Yeah.
don't know the tools until you stop drinking and have to find the tools. And so
Yes.
these people that are like, I can't say it out loud. What if I say it to my husband? And then what if I need a glass of wine because, or a bottle of wine because
Yeah.
things are so stressful next week?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Here's the thing. The sobriety it's not a what came first, the chicken or the egg. You can't figure this thing out until you're sober. That's why in
Right.
rehab you detox before you start going through the program. And
Yes.
so in your life, you had to quit cold turkey. You cannot,
Mm-mm.
when people are like saying the delusion of, oh, well, I do have a drinking problem, but I'm only going to do it for special occasions. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Right.
I already know how that story's going to go. Okay. But
Yes.
I'm going to let you figure out how that story's
Right.
going to go because
Yeah.
I am hopeful that they will then realize that you can't do it. That way's harder. I think that way is harder. If you have an
It's
issue.
so much harder.
And there
Well,
are
and
people that don't have issues with it, okay? But the majority of people, if you think into the
yeah.
back of your mind and your
Yeah.
brain and you really think about this, is this really serving your life? Is this really serving you as a mother? Is this enriching the life of your family?
Yeah.
Probably not.
And
I don't
like
know, but probably not.
right. And how are you using it, right? I think getting to that like and it's like no, I just like the taste of wine. Um well, no, that's not like think about the first time you tasted wine. We don't like the taste of wine.
Well,
It
guess
tastes like
what? They have
ethanol.
non-alcoholic wine too now.
Right.
If you
Yeah,
really
they
like the
do.
taste, you
And
can
it
get
tastes
that.
better because it doesn't have the ethanol. Like it
Yes.
doesn't taste like poison. But like why are you drinking? I hear so and I think that this is kind of women specific. Generally speaking, a lot of women drink to conform. Yes, we drink to escape and to numb because motherhood is so hard and there's so much and the expectation is just unrealistic. But we also drink to conform. We drink to like, well, I don't want them to feel bad, so I'm gonna have a glass of wine. And that in sobriety, I think my favorite part about sobriety is me being able to trust myself and check in with myself and say, how do I feel? What do I
Yeah.
need? And there's no more of that. Like, there's
Yeah.
no more of I'm going to, you know, put what is most important to me and my family and my life to the side to make you feel okay. Like that's I don't know if that's age. I think it's age plus sobriety, really. When there gets to a point where you're like, "Oh yeah, it's no, no, no. This
Yeah.
is this is the most important thing."
I think it's life experience, and I think it's a
Mhm.
lot of things. But I also think within sobriety comes wisdom, because wisdom comes from dealing with adversity, from digging things up, from solving our problems, from thinking, oh, this recurring thing in my relationship, or this argument with my spouse, or this issue with my
Yeah.
kids, it keeps coming up over and over. What do I do to solve that problem? When you have the band-aid of substance or whatever the
Yeah.
addictive substance is or behavior, you never get the opportunity to have those breakthroughs. And
Mhm.
life is rich because of those breakthroughs. And
Yes.
I see a lot of people hanging on to those things but
Mhm.
wanting for this life on the other
Mhm.
side. And I am not I'm not beating the AA Bible here, and I'm not like this is a end all be all for everybody. I really try to look at every person's situation and like give every person the advice that I feel is the best advice. But when I tell you 75 to 80% of the answer that I know in my mind, just
Mm.
having my own experience with this, is like, get off everything.
Yes.
Just try it for 30 days. Do the dry January, okay?
Yes.
Just try, because I just know the clarity of mind. Then I know the wisdom
Mhm.
from removing the numbing substance that will come.
Mhm.
Then I know how life compounds on life, and the richness will be delivered in these little breadcrumbs. And then
Yeah.
it's like you're 6 months into it and you're like, oh my gosh, they
Yes.
were right. And it's not like we
Yes.
know something that everybody else doesn't know. It's because we had issues with it that we had to deal with, and then we got to the other side. When I
Yes.
went into treatment, I thought I was just there to get sober, so my
Mm.
parents would be okay with it, so that I could like live a normal life, so I wouldn't die. And I did not realize the other side. And
Yeah.
like, what a gift it is that we
Yes.
know the other side.
It
um,
it's
what a
so
gift.
true. It's
Yeah.
so true. It's such a gift. And it's such a trust fall at the beginning. Because I like how you said it was like maybe 6 months in that you're like, oh, they were right. Like we talk about this all the time in our meetings when we have like people in early sobriety, like a couple of weeks, 30 days, 40 days. And I think it's so important to recognize that they might be sitting there and saying, I don't believe you. I don't
Oh,
believe
yeah.
anything you're saying. I think this
Yeah.
sucks. And like this isn't great. I miss, numbing out. I miss feeling a buzz. I don't like going to a social event without being able to drink wine. I miss all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And yes, because I think the grieving process, like you're grieving something that's been in your life for 20 years,
Yeah.
15 years, decades,
Yeah, and
right?
it's so insidious, like the way that it
Yes.
lies to you, and the
Oh,
further you get away from the lies, like
hmm
it is easier to see them. But they're in the
It's like a
beginning,
cult.
it wants you back in the cult.
Yes. It is like a
Yeah.
magnet too. Like you just won't always feel that way,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we say. We're like, yes, we get it. Like this is where you just trust, like you find a space and you find a community who where you can really show up as yourself and tell the truth. And, jaws aren't going to hit the floor. People aren't going to say, you did what? They're going to nod their heads and say, like, yes, we get it. You're in the right place.
Yeah.
Keep coming. Keep showing up and telling the truth. That's all you got to do. Just
Yeah.
show up and tell the truth. If your truth today is, I don't believe you and this sucks. Yes. Yes. Good. Keep going. And then just like you're lifting weights, you're getting stronger and you don't know you're getting stronger, right? You can't see your muscle fibers
Yeah.
tearing and then
Yeah.
repairing and all of that stuff, but you are. And then at some point, and people are always asking, like, when is it? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know when it is for you,
It's different for
right?
different people. Different people
Yeah.
are at different levels of their journey with alcohol or be whatever it is.
Yes.
And sometimes, like, you'll have the glimmer of
Mm.
it and you'll have the feeling. And then a circumstantial thing happens in your life, it sends you on a spiral. And you
Yeah.
forget. So
Yeah.
sometimes it appears and it goes away. And it's like you've got to be strong through those moments because it will come
Yes.
and it will remain consistently. Life is always life. Okay?
That's
Life
the
is not.
thing,
It is
right?
just, life doesn't change on the outside,
Yes.
but you change inside of it. And then you,
Yeah.
in turn, really are able to, like, it's just such a different thing.
I think what I've noticed, especially, talking to so many women in sobriety, is just how quick we are to like discount ourselves. And like, I can't do that. I can't feel that. I can't
Yeah.
feel social anxiety because I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. And so give me alcohol to come. I can't deal with the stress of coming home from work and then my kids drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Give me alcohol. And it's just a constant discounting ourselves. And really, if we said like, wait, but you can, and the more you do, the more you can see you can.
Yeah.
And then that just you grow and then you're like, "Oh my God, I can
Yeah.
actually count on myself." And there's I think I had like a specific feeling with this. I lost my dad just over a year into sobriety, and it was a really like traumatic way. We were in a fight. I wasn't there. It was kind of like the worst possible scenario.
I'm
And
sorry to hear that. I knew
thank
that,
you.
but I'm sorry to
Yeah.
hear that.
Thank you. I think that then gave me the perspective of like, oh my God, if I could do that, if I can deal with that, which I did. I
Yeah.
didn't drink. I didn't, if I could do that, oh
Yeah, I
yeah, I
could.
can. Yeah, then okay, I can go to a party and be awkward. Like I could be awkward all day long. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And I just think too, it helps us to hear our own voice. Your voice, yourself will speak to you in your brain.
Yes.
If you can, like, silence the noise of everybody else's voices and opinions and just random aimless scrolling that fills your time. You have a voice in your head that will speak to you and let you know what you're feeling.
Yes.
I hate myself right now because of the way that I'm drinking. That is your voice.
Yeah.
My life is worse because of this. I feel like I am not as good of a mom because of things surrounding my drinking, like the more kids I have. That is your voice.
Yeah.
And you can hear your voice when things start to quiet down. And so many people don't ever hear their voice, or then once they start to hear their voice, they don't trust that it's their voice.
Yes.
You
It
know?
did. It's such a good point. I remember feeling in early sobriety like it was learning a new language. And I was like learning the language of like my voice and
Yeah.
being like, okay, I'm feeling something. What is it? What am I feeling? What do
What
I
is
need?
it?
Like, what are you
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Because for so long, if alcohol's in the equation, we can't hear it, right? And it's
Right.
just
It
a
drowns it
signal to our,
out.
yeah, it's like,
And
no,
our
be
feelings.
quiet.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets tricky is that some people around us, even people who love us, benefit from that,
Yeah.
right? Because when we
Yes.
don't have like
Yes.
needs and when we're quiet, even people who love us, like our partners or our parents, our kids, like then it's easier,
Yeah.
right? But what's the cost? It's like, no, actually, moms have needs. We have things that we need to thrive and to feel good for
Yeah.
ourselves. And drinking really allows us and everybody else not to hear it. And that's,
That's the
that's
cost.
dangerous.
That's the
Yeah.
cost to you as the parent not getting your needs filled. But you know what the cost is to the kids and the spouse? The richest, most fulfilled
Mm.
version of your spouse or your parent,
Yes.
you will never meet. You will
Yeah.
not you will not be in relationship with that person because that
Mhm.
person will not have achieved that, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
And relationships, so sobriety, yes, it is a healthier way of life, it is a safer way of life, it is a more
Mm.
vibrant way of life. But the way that it can enrich your relationships with people, especially people that have been in relationship with you in active addiction,
Yeah.
is really amazing. I can
Mm.
remember, the closest relationships that I had at the time when I became sober was, like I said, Kyle, my husband. He and I were dating, and he dated two different people. He dated me before in active addiction, then he dated me after.
Yeah.
It was like learning to ride a bike again, like starting, even though we had dated for a long time.
Yes.
It was different. I was
Mm-hmm.
different. And we have the most amazing relationship now from having fought for that relationship. I remember a
Yeah.
therapist was like, looked at us literally in a therapy session and said, "It's a wonder you two are still together." And I was like, "Is that like should we get a
You're like,
plaque or something? Because you're a really good therapist. So
thanks.
what you're saying that to us is not good."
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people think of sobriety as, this is my issue, it's going to enrich my life on the other side. But when I tell you it will enrich your relationships, it is a beautiful thing. So
Yes.
tell me about how it's enriched your relationships. How has sobriety affected your relationships? And are there ever times where you're like, oh, this is like awkward, and like this is like, or has it just been like, what is it like on the other side? Tell me about that
Okay,
part.
awkward. I feel like I'm just always awkward. And so that's
You're
just
not awkward.
I kind of am, but I kind of lean into it. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna be the one who says the weird thing and like that's okay in social situations.
Yeah.
When I was drinking, I what I learned about myself in sobriety was that I thought alcohol was like the fast track to connection. Like, let's get
Mm.
drunk, like when I'm in my 20s, let's get drunk and then tell each other like everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
turns out that that's not really how it works. That's not how true connection and relationships work. And so in sobriety, I have felt the deepest and also fast connections. Like when you're with another
Yeah.
sober woman, like the deep connection that happens pretty fast because you're already you have a huge thing in common. Like you and I feel so connected to you,
It is so true. It is
right?
so true. Yes, I feel
And
the same.
yeah, like there's just there's just this like base level of connection and understanding, which I have always craved. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always want to feel small talk is my nightmare. Like I don't care about like anything except like tell me your childhood trauma and then I'm
Yeah.
happy. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I'll connect over that. Like tell me all the stuff. I love
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
With my relationship, I remember, well, first, the like stupid, kind of not even drunk, but like tipsy fights are
Mm-hmm.
gone. Like
Mm-hmm.
those just don't
Isn't
happen.
that awesome? Because they're
Yes.
stupid
They're so
and
like
they're
when you
fueled by
can't even
something that is
really,
not your own feeling. they're,
yeah, it's not your
they're
own feeling.
such a
You
waste of
kind of
time.
can't remember it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The night you're like, I know I was mad. I was very, what was I mad about?
Mm-hmm.
And having a fight completely sober is really gratifying
Mm-hmm.
because then like, oh, I'm actually feeling this, like, whatever it is, if it's hurt, something unfair, and it comes out as anger, and you know what you're feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's no, like, what did I say? What did I, like, having a sober fight with your spouse is different. And
Well, yeah,
it's
and
productive.
I was going to say there's resolution.
Yes.
A tipsy fight, which gosh bless
Oh,
Kyle and my heart when we were dating. It was just, it was
yes.
just so. It is just like, are we really spending our time doing this round
It's
and
like
round?
drama,
The
right?
Christmas tree. It is
Yes.
just, and it is so unproductive. It is such a life suck. It is
Yes.
just, it's just, it steals the joy of being in a
Yes.
relationship with someone. And so many of the feeling is not there because you're drunk, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe the
Yeah.
thought is there,
Oh, the
but like there's
worst.
no resolution. And like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like any sort of argument or any sort of disagreement, and sometimes like that conversation can end in I still feel this way and you still feel this way, but you know what,
Yeah.
this is how we can resolve this, and we will
Yes.
resolve it and we'll be best
Yes.
friends after. And it is, you can't do that when you're drunk because you're not,
No, you
you're
can't.
irrational.
You can't. And if just one person is drunk, well, if two people are drunk, it's like, whoa, watch out, right? Like that's just a hot mess. But even if one person is drunk, you're like, I can't, you're
I
not
know.
going to talk to that
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it's also trust, right? It's like my
Yeah.
husband can trust me to, yeah, know how I'm feeling. And there's just such a great, my husband stopped drinking. Actually, he's doing a year, no alcohol. He stopped in April.
That's
And
great.
so he's been like, and he was a party guy before I met him. And, he would have like a couple of beers with golf. And my boundary was always like 2 beers, that's it. Because I don't want him coming home drunk or like that doesn't feel good to me when I was
Mm-hmm.
sober. But yeah, so he's
That's
taking
great.
a year off and he's loving it. And there's just a trust that's inherent
Yeah.
when, he's going out to dinner or with the guys. I'm not worried.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's gonna act full of integrity as he does in his, when his mind is right and not under the influence of alcohol. He feels
Right.
the same about me. Like there's a trust there that you just can't get to if alcohol is invited in
Yeah.
because that's the wild card.
That it's the wild card. Yeah, it's the wild card. It's the gasoline on
Yes.
the flame.
Yeah.
It's so, for people too that are thinking, because you kind of made this private decision internally. You didn't tell everyone around you everybody's got to stop drinking. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, you can't.
You really
Unless
have
unless you
to.
want like no friends and no like
Right.
no one wants that.
No one. And I remember like whenever I was in early recovery and I was like, okay, how do I go back and integrate into this life? I'm living
Yeah.
with my sister who still participates. I'm living then with a spouse, eventually who still drinks and doesn't
Yeah.
have an issue. How do you do that? Well, I remember that they used to always say, if you really need that from someone, if you're living in the same home and you need to take all the alcohol out of your house or you need that person to at least stop drinking around you, they said, ask that of that person. And they used to say, and I
Yeah.
think that there's something to this. The only people, if they love you, the only people who will say, I can't do that or no, are the people who also have an issue. They were like,
Yeah.
if people don't have an issue with it, they're going to be like, okay.
Right.
And I have
Right.
found that that is true.
Yeah.
And, because if someone's not attached to it, then they're like, oh, I can
Right.
do that for you. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've, gone through different phases, like in my relationships, and we didn't have it in the house for the first like few years. And then now it's like, yeah, I can be in the house. I don't mind it. But I've never really had, in almost 11 years, I've never had a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I just really want it again.
Right.
I have had moments where I felt sorry for myself when everyone around me was drunk, because I was like,
Mm.
well, solo person in the room now,
Yeah,
because
like
you just
that's
don't, I
just
don't want
not
to talk to a bunch
fun.
of drunk people. Like once they
No.
get 5 drinks in, I'm just like,
Yes.
you don't like, we're on different planes right
Yeah, you're
now.
like
Okay.
acting like a toddler and I'm still an adult.
And
So,
like, I'm not
yeah.
judging you for your choices, because it's
No,
like
it's
you
just
can do
not
what you want to do,
fun.
but it's just not fun for me anymore. I'm
Yeah.
alone at the table. It's fine,
Yes.
But it's the only people who will have
Yeah.
an issue with you asking them that is maybe someone that needs to look at their own relationship with alcohol. And I never
Yeah.
try to be judgmental about it. Like I said, you and I show the shining light of the other side. But I
Yeah.
also do want to mention things like that, because you do need sometimes the cold hard truth of the reality, especially if you're not going to hit rock bottom. You need to
Yeah.
hear something in a podcast that said, because we want you to have a better life. You and
Yeah.
I, we want
Yes.
every woman and every mom and every person that has a strained relationship with alcohol or something
Yeah.
else, we want them to reach the other side, because it's so much better. It's
Oh,
just so awesome. And so like, I don't feel bad saying, hey, if you can't, or like I see a lot of people like justifying a lot of drinking while pregnant or different situations, and I'm just like, hey,
oof.
if you really can't
Yeah.
stop, just
Yeah.
look at it. Just really look at
Yeah.
that thought, because I just wonder if you could have a brighter life on the other side. And I
Yeah.
I do not want people to think that am judgmental, and I don't want to be judgmental, because I'm not. But I know the life on the other side, and I know what my brain told me when I did
Hmm.
have an issue, and all the
Yeah.
justifications that I made. And I felt the exact same way that you did. I hated it. I
Yeah.
hated myself. I hated the way that I felt. I hated the relationships it was ruining. I hated that I couldn't keep a job. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way that I was. I just hated it all. I hated the
Yeah.
voices in my head. I hated my life that was a good life. And I just wonder how many people are out there walking the streets feeling the same way, but saying, "Oh, it's something else." You
Right.
know?
Or like that's obviously not for me. Like I obviously don't qualify. I always want to say and make sure that women specifically know that anybody's reaction to your sobriety or your decision to do dry January or your break from drinking, anybody's reaction, whatever it is in direct correlation to their relationship with
Yeah.
alcohol. And I think I know I have been there when I heard someone else was not drinking. I'm like, wait, why? Really? Not even
Mm-hmm.
one?
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, I couldn't imagine doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to drink alone because then that means that I have to look at my relationship with alcohol and I don't want to do
Right.
that.
I
And
can
so
too. I
like
can
drink
remember.
with me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
drink with me, because then it makes it okay.
Yeah. Then I don't
Because
have to look at mine because I'm
yeah.
not ready or I
Yeah.
don't want to. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the identity shift, because too, you said like I was a
Mm.
party girl. It's like everybody was a party girl in college, I feel
Hmm.
like.
Yeah.
Ironically, except for me until the very end. I was the one
Wait,
that
you
didn't
weren't?
drink. No, I didn't. I didn't drink
Really?
my entire life until I was like at the very end of college. It was like my senior year. I think it was like my senior year or so. I was always the one, like all my friends were so wild and like did everything,
Yeah.
but I just was like, oh, I can have fun at the party without drinking. I just don't drink. And then as
Oh,
soon as I did
wow.
start drinking,
Yeah.
it was definitely something that was like, oh, she's
Now,
got,
here
she
it
likes
is.
this.
Here
There
it
it is.
is.
Hello. And then, just
Yeah.
like anything that is addictive, usually it starts out like fine. It's like, oh, I can be the
Yes.
president of the United States. Like this
Yeah.
medication makes me feel like I can do anything. It's
Right.
great in the beginning. And then it ruins your life,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially
And
if you
then,
get
and
addicted to
then.
it. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and you want to remember when you felt like that in the beginning. So,
Yeah.
in my early days of drinking, it's like, oh gosh, this is great. And
Yeah.
when everyone else around you is doing it, it feels like more okay. But when you
Totally.
get in the motherhood
Yeah.
circles,
Yeah.
and stuff, and like your life is different and you have more responsibilities,
Yeah.
that's when the problems do start to amplify. But then you've got the mom culture of
Which is insane.
the
Yes.
I need
That's,
this and it's
mm-hmm.
justified and it's okay because it's hard. Of course it's
Yep.
hard. But like we want your life to be better. And if it's
Yeah.
making your life worse and that voice in your head is saying that, look at that so you can have a
And
better life.
yes, and making motherhood harder. Like that's what
Yes.
I think that
Yes.
one huge trick we've been taught is that alcohol is here to help us be better moms and to make motherhood easier. And I cannot tell you how much
I
that
know.
is that was born in a boardroom for alcohol marketers to sell more to moms
Mm-hmm.
because, they needed a new market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not true. It
Mm-hmm.
makes it so much harder. Think about all the things moms have to do and then doing it with a hangover. It's like, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah.
You asked about identity and like the shift of identity. I think that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I really compare it to like getting like settling down.
Yeah.
I felt that identity shift as being, I liked being a party girl. I mean, I liked it. I didn't like it the next morning because
Mm-hmm.
I did feel the shame. Like when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that I felt so much shame.
Yeah.
But also I felt like power in being the party girl and being a bartender in college
Mm-hmm.
and being,
Yeah.
there's a power that comes with that. And I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that. And when I got married and started to have kids, I remember specifically being like, that part is over. And that's hard because
Yeah. It's
there
your
was a
identity.
yeah, that was my identity for a long time. And so now what is going to replace that is, okay, now it's the nurturing of this family. And so stopping drinking was kind of similar to that, the identity shift of becoming a mom. And it's like, okay, now I'm shifting again and I'm evolving, and no longer am I trying to escape into a highly addictive substance and really getting caught up in that. But now I'm going to, okay, now I can be present as a mom
Yeah.
and really like show my kids how to feel,
Yeah.
right? Because like we're not taught how to feel. And so just like showing them like, yeah, it's okay. Like all the feelings, feel all the feelings
Yeah.
and like kind of so and it's a process. Like it doesn't happen overnight. And I think
Yes.
recognizing that it's hard. Like
Yeah.
leaving the identity of being someone who drinks, someone who loves wine, right? Because wine is an identity now. Like I'm a wine mom, or like I'm a
Yeah.
mom who brings champagne to every party. I'm this woman. Leaving that behind is hard, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
shift.
Yeah, and I think it's hard in group settings.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to rehab or you have the rock bottom, people are like, "Oh, well, they quit because this happened."
Right. Yeah.
But when you choose to quit because of the voices in your head and the way that you've come to terms that I'm not feeling this way anymore, that is a heavier burden to bear. And
Mm.
so, like, how did you get through moments like that? I always say, I'm like, tell people that you don't drink anymore. It's way easier than, oh, I
Oh,
don't know. I just feel bad
yeah.
because you're making excuses, and the person
Yeah.
that's had 3 drinks is going to end up talking you into drinking. But
Yeah.
just say you've got to be strong in it and say, I am not drinking for 30 days, or
Yep.
like I am not drinking for. It's almost easier when you say, actually, I'm just not.
Yes. Yeah, you're
Um,
you're not leaving it open to say like,
yeah,
well, maybe, or I'm thinking. Saying I'm a non-drinker, I think is really good. Like you're identifying now as someone who doesn't drink rather than you're
yeah,
just trying this on. Sometimes that could take a while to get there. Dry January is like the perfect opportunity. I'm doing dry
I
January.
agree.
Oh, got it. Okay. Obviously, you've committed,
Hmm.
or, my husband said when he first went on like his work trip and everyone was drinking, Silver Oak, and he was like, oh, and they asked him, he's like, I've committed to doing a year without alcohol. And saying I've committed, like, no one's going to
Yeah.
argue with that.
Yeah, because it's finality. It is
Yes.
like they'll go on to the next person. But if you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'm just trying to like
I'm
improve my
trying.
health,
Yeah.
or oh, I'm just, my
Yeah. If
my
it's like
wife's doing this
just,
thing, so it's just I'm gonna do this thing. It's just like just be firm in it, okay? It's
yes.
gonna make it easier for you.
And
Did
like,
you
no
have
one's going to
trouble? Like,
argue.
yeah,
Okay, so Mine mine was very specific because I stopped in January on January 19th, 2020, and then like the world shut down not too far after
True.
that. So, in looking back, I can see what really helped me is that I didn't have to navigate social stuff right away, which
Because
I
the
think
social
was
stuff stopped.
because there was no social stuff. And I think
Right.
that was really helpful. And I also didn't have to answer this question of, well, will I ever be social again? Because I
Hmm.
knew I would.
Hmm.
And so it gave me this like grace period of hibernation to say, like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
just going to use this time to figure it out. And you can do that for yourself. I
Hmm.
don't think necessarily in dry January you have to because you can just
Yeah.
say, I've committed to doing dry January.
And it's so common, and so many people
Yes.
are doing it. So
It's
it's
so much more
easier, I
common
think.
now.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's so like you can lean on that excuse. Even in February, you know what? I committed to doing dry January and I felt so good. I committed now to February too.
Hmm.
Like that is no
Yeah.
one's gonna say, well, yeah, but who cares about commitment, right? To ourselves.
Right.
Like no one's gonna say that. And if
No
they
one's going to
do,
say that.
walk away because they
Well,
suck.
but you're right. Like when there
Yeah.
is a line in the sand, usually people don't cross it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so what I love too about we have talked. This podcast is going to be so inspirational. I think to people who are curious about this way of life because they're going to
Yeah.
be inspired. They're going to be inspired by you. They're going to be inspired by the things that you say. And I always think that being drawn to something is so much easier than being pulled
Oh,
away from something.
totally.
It is
Yes.
a positive way to do something that may not be easy. If it was easy, then everybody would do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And, while I do have a little bit more of traditional recovery in my story, I do not attend AA meetings, and I haven't been to an AA meeting in probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. That wasn't something that I was personally drawn to. I did a
Yeah.
90 and 90. I think that they're really great for a lot of people, but I really had good treatment. I had a good therapist, and I had a different way that I did it. And I love
Mm-hmm.
the different way that you do it because I think that there
Mm-hmm.
are multiple paths to the same thing.
Yes.
And I love too that your platform in the last 4 years has evolved from I'm going to inspire you and make you want this way of life to I'm actually going to give you a tool to help you achieve this way of life. So the
Yes.
Sober Mom Life Cafe and the membership is something
Yep.
that's new since the last time that we spoke.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic because you now have retreats, which we
Thank
in my
you.
Sunday's
Yes.
pajamas went on a
Yes.
retreat with you and
Oh,
I
those pajamas, you
love.
guys. Oh, those pajamas.
We are so happy to be
So
a part
good.
of
Yes.
that.
And thank you so much. Those are so good.
Of
Big
course, I'm
hit.
happy to support a retreat like that. And you have spouse support groups. You have a lot of the things that traditional recovery used to provide, but I think that sometimes are tired or not for everyone. So, can you tell us a little bit about this, about the cafe, about the
Yeah.
membership program? Um, I think it is amazing.
Thank
Amazing.
you. It is probably the thing that I'm most proud of because, when I stopped, I felt alone. I felt like
Yeah.
everyone else had this figured out and I was the only one. And being able to bring together women, so it's peer support, which means we've all been there. We're all at different stages and we're all helping each other. We have meetings every single day, sometimes two, three times a
It's
day.
amazing.
Yeah, we have sound bath, we have meditation, we have monthly book club, we have Deb from Mocktail Mom comes and like teaches us a new mocktail every month. We have all these different, we have meetings for 1 year plus, we have early sobriety meetings. And it's all just a way to come together. And especially, as moms, as busy women, we don't make this time for ourselves that we
Yeah.
can come together and just like, let's talk about you. Like, you just get to talk about you, talk about your successes, talk about what you're struggling with, talk about, how do we set boundaries with our partners? How do we handle our mother-in-law who's coming, who we always drink with and we really don't want to this time? How do we go to this party? Whatever it
Yeah.
is, like, and then we've all been there. And And how do we work through shame? How do we talk to our kids about all of this stuff? So
That's so
I
amazing.
I love it so much. And we have women who have been coming for years just because it's really nice to, and it's all on Zoom. And so you're in, with like maybe 30 other women, sometimes 40. There are smaller groups too. Like, when do we get to do that and just connect? Like,
It is
connect.
amazing because you can drink in community all the time. The
Mm,
world and society is set up for drinking in social
yes.
settings and like talking about all of this stuff. How amazing that, well, I hate it that like you have to really like form a group and have the membership and the cafe and
Right.
have the AA meeting. Like we, the sober people, have to
Right.
form the group, you know?
Yes.
But like
Yes.
how amazing that you can do that in sobriety because support is the thing that's going to help you
Yes.
when it gets hard. And that is
Yes.
the great thing about the rooms of AA. You can walk into that room, not know what's going to, and like, there are going to be people that will embrace you and help you.
Yeah.
And this is this version of sobriety's version of that. And you're the
Yeah.
first person, I think, that is doing that in a format like this. You're like the Bill of New Age sobriety.
That's
The Bill
that's
Wilson
so
of New Age
funny. Okay,
sobriety.
Mallory, that's a first.
You are. They're going to be telling the story of Suzanne in a book somewhere
Oh
in
my God,
one
that's so
day.
funny.
Oh,
I,
that's
it's
awesome.
it's the best. It's one of those, I host a meeting every Friday morning, and I come away from that so recharged and inspired by these women who are just being so brave. And we always talk about, like, when you go out there, the noise is going to be really loud. Like, they're going to romanticize alcohol and they're going to try and tell you it's the answer to everything. Like, come back here, get centered, like, remember what we're doing and that it's a really big deal what you're doing. And then you feel more empowered to go out there. It's my favorite. And
It's
and then, like, we
really
get to,
amazing.
yeah, thank you. We get to do
It's
the retreats, which we do retreats in February and October. We have one coming up in February in Scottsdale. And then when you get to see that it translates, and these women you've been talking to on a screen and who you feel like because you know them so well, and then you get to, like, hug them in real life. It's incredible. It's just, I'm always blown away by these women. I love them.
Yeah, it's amazing because there's just something in the eyes of a sober woman who's chosen this way
Mm,
of life that is inspiring. It's
yeah.
inspiring, and I love everything about the content that you put out. I love everything about your recovery journey, just like as a person that's also in recovery. I think it's
Thank
amazing.
you.
But I
Thank
also love
you.
how it has translated online, how it has inspired other people to become also sober women or sober moms.
Yeah.
And I am so thrilled, Suzanne, that we finally get a book. And like, when does the book come out? Because
Oh
I know
my
writing a book is the
gosh.
hardest thing in the entire world,
Oh
but
my God.
books live forever. Books live forever. And this message from the new Bill Wilson here.
Stop it.
Bill Wilson is the guy that like started AA back at 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
this book is going to stand the test of time. I know all of the hard work
Mhm.
and everything that you are pouring into it. It is going to change so many lives. It's going to help so many women find their way to this version of life. And I am thrilled for this book to come out.
Thank
I am
you.
it is so needed in our world and I am so excited for it. So
Oh,
tell me about the book. I want to end on that note because I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, I want more.
oh, thank you. Okay, Mallory, you are always so supportive, and I appreciate you so much. Like, do you remember when we talked about it, when I think I was like trying to get the deal, or I was, and you were like talking me
Yes.
through it. Like, I cannot believe now it's written. I got a deal with Harper One. I will tell you,
I love Harper One. I
yes,
love Harper
I do
One.
too.
Yeah.
Like, they've been incredible. I'll tell you that selling this book, for some reason, there's a thought in publishing that this space is saturated. And I'm like, you guys, I
No
don't
one is
know.
writing
No.
about sobriety. Not like one single person, like you talk about it.
It's not, and that's what I kept saying. I'm like, you guys, I know what but just believe me, okay? Like women, even men, like this book is needed. Like we need to talk about sobriety in a different way. And Harper One really, and my agent Colleen, who's like amazing, they saw it and they were like, yeah, let's do this. And so I'm so excited. There's stories that I've never told, which means a lot because I talk a lot. And so there's stories you've never heard. And
Yeah.
this is for all the people who message me on Instagram, leave comments on the podcast, like, okay, but like really like how? Like tell me exactly how. This is what it is.
Yeah.
It's part memoir, it's part guide. I walk you through all of it. And it's I can't believe it. It still to me feels like it still feels insane.
Yeah.
It is like it's like birthing a child.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm excited and I'm coming to you when it's out.
Yes, I'm
I'll come
excited.
down
So like
there.
fall of 2025
Yeah.
ish.
Yeah.
And I am so excited, yes, to have you back on the podcast, and we'll talk about the book specifically. But you guys get excited. I'm sure that it'll be available for pre-order at some point in time. Once you
Yes.
reveal
Oh
the cover
yes.
and the title. I know the title, but I'm not going to reveal. I'm
I
not
know.
going to do your
I
title
know. Mallory
reveal.
told me I have to do a rollout. I didn't even know that.
I was like, "Do people know the title yet?" And she was like, "No." And I was
I
like, "Wait,
don't
you?"
think so.
I'm not going to say the title then because it needs to be a big rollout of the title and the cover.
I was like,
Suzanne.
oh, okay. You guys, Mallory just tells me everything. I just follow her lead because she knows what
Oh
she's doing.
gosh, yeah. Sometimes not, but sometimes I've just done it before. And
Oh,
you and I, we've learned a lot from doing
yes.
things before, and then just living life.
Yeah.
As two sober women.
Oh,
I
well, you are my inspiration. Like I'm
Oh
telling you,
gosh,
you
that
guys, if
is very nice of
you
you because
listen
I
to
feel
this
the same about
podcast,
you.
well, you listen to this podcast, you love her online, and let me just tell you, she is like exactly the same and so warm and loving and just a bright light. So
That
yes.
means more to me than you know. And I feel
Mm,
the same about
so
you
true.
for real because like I said and like I've said several times in this podcast, I think it's really powerful to be drawn to something you want. I
Mm.
think that in traditional rooms of AA, they always say pick a sponsor of someone that you want. You want the life that they have. You want the way that they act. You want the relationships that they have. Pick a sober woman
Yeah.
that lives the life that you want to live, that parents the way you want to parent, that seems like they have a good relationship. Like, see the good in that. And don't ignore it. And don't let the
Yeah.
alcohol that's making you hate like talk
Yeah.
you into being like, well, she just got it all good. No, she made a choice actually, and she
Yeah.
changed her life. And like, it's really cool what happened on the other side. So let like Suzanne, you are truly, you're very inspiring to me because you gave a voice to something that I felt on the other side of my sobriety. And because I came through a traditional path, I gave partially like a voice to that in my Living Fully book, and I talk about it a lot. But you
Yeah.
really, really took it to another level. And I admire that because I know it's changing people's lives.
Oh,
And it's
thank
really awesome.
you.
And I'm very
Thank
excited for the book.
you.
So,
Oh,
and thank
thank
you for
you.
coming on. This
Oh
is
my
a
God.
busy
Thank you for having
season.
me. I
And
loved
so,
it.
thank you. And
Thank
there are
you.
so many people in my life that are like your biggest fans. And like this morning, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you get
Oh,
to have her on the podcast. Like everybody was just so excited. So I know people will be thrilled. And also, like, this is coming out in January, dry January. Like, start it today. Start it
yes.
today.
Yes. Started today.
Just
Do it
try it.
now. Why
Like
not
we keep
now?
saying, why not? Just try it.
Yep.
It doesn't taste
Yeah.
that good, okay?
No,
Just
you guys,
try
it's
it.
not that good. It's not that good.
Good. Cake is good. Well,
Oh my God, you and I and our sugar.
I know.
I just had some sugar right before I came on. You guys, sugar.
Oh,
Yeah,
look what I got in my
eat the
purse. I
sugar.
got a Dexcom. I'm about to, like, I got to put my blood sugar monitor back on because I got gestational diabetes.
Wait, okay, I almost had that. I think I had that with my first, but I did so many walks around the hospital because
Walks
I,
are crazy. Like, it will
yes,
bring the blood sugar down. You
I
can't walk the
know.
alcohol off, but you can walk the blood sugar down
You can walk
sometimes.
the blood sugar off.
Because you can't walk after the alcohol, but the sugar, you can still walk.
Yeah. Sugar.
Yeah.
And like no one's ever lost their family over too much sugar or gotten a DUI over too much sugar. You know what I mean?
It causes
you
other
don't black
problems,
out.
but yeah.
Other problems. But you don't black out.
You don't black out from it. I sometimes feel like I black out when I'm eating it.
Kind
I'm
of
like,
do.
my dad's, I remember last Thanksgiving, he was like, I think the cat got on the bar last night and ate the pies. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was me. It was, I was the cat. The fork marks that he thought were like the little cat teeth, it was me. So now every time he's like, oh, a cat got into the pie again. We don't even have a cat anymore. So anyways, you know.
Like, yeah, it was definitely the cat. That's so funny.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for
you.
sharing your time and your story
Yes.
and just the light on the other side of a sober life. I think that you are amazing. I'm going to link all things Suzanne
Yay.
at the end of this, but Instagram, I feel like, is where I see you most show up. You have basically everything under the sun. You have the membership now, and you've had the podcast, and like there's so many things depending on like where people like to consume this type of content.
Yeah, I'm all
but-
over the place.
All over the place. Anywhere that's good on the internet,
Anywhere.
you are. So
Yes. Well, thank you
again.
for having me. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, well, I will link. Thank you guys all for listening to this episode of the Living Fully podcast. I hope that it inspires you in some way. Thank you so much to Suzanne for coming on. I will link everything that we have talked about on in these show notes. And then when this book comes out for pre-order, I will throw that up on my Instagram as well. So thank you guys for listening. Tune in 2 weeks for more.